So when we talk about investing, probably the worst thing that we can hear, the B word, is bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy!
The last thing we want to do when we're investing is invest in a company that goes bankrupt. Our equity stake goes to zero. That's bad. So how do you avoid that? We had the coronavirus pandemic, unemployment higher than it's been since the Great Depression. Gold's Gym filed for bankruptcy. J.C. Penney is on our list. Whiting Petroleum. J. Crew, the retailer, filed for bankruptcy. Big problem. So how do we avoid this? I like to look at an indicator that's been around since I think 1967 when Edward Altman created it. It's called the Altman Z-score. And really, it's just 5 different things that we look at, fundamental ratios, just core basic good business numbers that we look at to see how a company is doing financially, profitability, leverage, liquidity. And what we get when we put all those things together is a number, usually a single digit number. And we look for the magic number is 1.8. Historically, anything below that 1.8 level is very high risk for bankruptcy. Anything above 3 is considered very strong. And going into 2007, Mr. Altman ran the score and got a score, I think it was about 1.81 of the whole, the S&P 500. That's trouble. And he was one of the first to predict a big financial debt crisis because the indicators he was watching, he knew that some sort of debt crisis was going to come. So right now, depending on the metrics you use, and the exact numbers, the S&P 500 itself is about 2.17, 2.2. So we're certainly nowhere near that 3, and we're coming down towards that 1.8. So there's some trouble there. We're in the gray space, but really, I'm sure you're looking for, the companies that are on the list that are below that 1.8. So I picked 5 of them. Some of them are household names. Hopefully you don't own any of these, but if you do, it's not necessarily bad. I'll tell you why in a second. But so one of the first companies is Kodak. It has an Altman Z-score of 0.99, and it's no surprise that a name, a historic name like Kodak is having some problems. It was before this coronavirus mess, the company was having trouble keeping up in the digital age. But you might not be surprised to hear that Uber it has a score of 0.97, and that's because it has $17 billion in debt. And get this, $4.7 billion in negative free cash flow each year. That's a problem. It's got a lot of debt and it has cash going out the door, so it can't pay for that. So it's got to do some financing. And the whole coronavirus mess has only made it worse. One of my favorite stocks, 3D Systems, ticker symbol DDD, is on the list. It has an Altman Z score of 0.97. Its numbers are a little bit better. It has $24 million in positive cash flow, but it does have about $300 million in debt. So it's got some issues there. It's been a pretty good stock, pretty hot stock during this coronavirus mess. So just because it's on this list doesn't mean you have to sell it. YRC Worldwide, a big trucking company. You've probably seen their trucks. After 2008, they had some issues. It was a company I was writing about way back then. Their score is 0.92. And they have $120 million in negative cash flow. And then Timken Steel, the ticker symbol TMST, that has a score probably the lowest on our list of 0.74. So, a steel company right now had some problems going into this. Nobody's building right now. But here's the thing with that, steel, if we get stimulus spending, infrastructure spending, steel could be really big. So all 5 of these companies, just because they're on the bankruptcy list, I almost said on the cusp of bankruptcy, it's not necessarily true. They're just on our watch list, but that's priced in. So, 3D Systems, DDD, that's a company I'm recommending. I think it's strong. I think as it pulls out of this bankruptcy, as its Altman Z score rises, it could be good. So just because these companies are on the list doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But we can also look at the inverse of this. Any company above 3, for you long-term investors, that's a good opportunity. Search for companies with an Altman Z score above 3. And so the ultimate question: how do you do this? Altman Z is not something that you can search for on a lot of screeners, but they are out there. Most brokerage platforms allow you to do that. There's some custom subscription things that allow you to do that. Search for Altman Z. Do some research on it. Look at these 5 companies I mentioned and see what makes sense for you. There's some good opportunity out there. And using this, you can hopefully avoid the companies that are on the cusp of bankruptcy and keep those big zeros out of your portfolio. So that's it. I hope you like that. I hope it keeps you out of trouble. If you want more information like this, of course, I have a free e-letter, Manward Digest. The link to sign up is below. I urge you to sign up, click subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.